Here's to Fathom. A game that scared the socks off many people, myself included, is a psychological horror game that made its way into the scene in July 2021 with its first story titled Home Alone, which is about a young boy who is left home alone while his parents are gone for work. Upon analyzing each project, you would think they're like every other horror title. But here's the catch. Allegedly, these games are based on real events, but with other titles like Ironbark Lookout and Norwood Hitchhike, you start to second guess whether or not this is really true. In today's video, we'll be breaking down each story and comparing them to real life scenarios, testing realism. Like I mentioned in the introduction, Home Alone is a story about a young boy who is left home while his parents are away on a work trip. But things turn dark when Miles realizes he is being watched. The game opens with something that really stood out to me. Miles, our narrator states, I didn't want to put this up on Reddit just for it to be called a piece of fiction, which caught my eye because it's suggesting that this could have originated online. After searching r/no sleep, a subreddit known for late night horror stories, I was unable to find anything we could call the source. With that, I already have suspicion on our game. Home invasions are very common, with one happening every 25 seconds, so there's no doubt that the event itself is realistic. As for our characters, Miles just seems like every other young boy, watching TV and studying, who unfortunately had to be alone at the wrong time. But what really makes me start to question realism are Paula and the intruder. Paula saves Miles by sending his mother a photo of the man standing outside and calling the police, which allows Miles's mother to alert him. It is very unlikely for a neighbor to intervene at that time of day, and to be watching the house? I know Miles's mother could have asked her to do so, but this is 1 a.m. we're talking about. Talk about night owl. And how is the intruder going in and out of the house without being caught by Miles? Like, you can clearly see him walk up the stairs while Miles is eating his lasagna. Is the intruder Jerry? Little mousy man. The game doesn't show how he got in beforehand, who he is to Miles, and why he made himself known by appearing at the front door. When Miles gets word of this intruder being in his home, he tries to walk out of his room, but he is unable to due to the man being next to the stairway in his parents' room. So, Miles just goes and hides under his bed until Paul arrives with the police? In real cases, that is a hit or miss depending on the intruder's intent, and that's also a very obvious spot to hide. Probably one of the first places the intruder is going to look. But there are real cases where this worked, like the Chicago student nurse incident, which took place in 1966 where Corazon Amurao managed to escape with her life by hiding under a bed. With that, our first story is realistic and more believable than most. Norwood Hitchhike stars Holly, a young teenager who is trying to avoid traffic on her way home from a gaming convention. Her car ends up breaking down due to getting out of her car to move the huge logs in the road, and she ends up hitchhiking to a nearby motel. Turns out, the whole time Holly was being stalked by unidentified men who had initially planned to kidnap her, with crazy ways like plan to get a dated coffee machine outside the motel. That's for another time. In the end, Holly is saved by the motel manager, but that is not enough to fool her. She has suspicion that the town was home to a cult or drug ring. Unfortunately, in our economy, both stalking and hitchhiking are very common. 1.3% of people aged 16 or older experienced stalking in 2019. That's 3.4 million people. Insane. But with Norwood Hitchhike, the story feels difficult to believe due to the way the events take place. At the beginning of the game, after Holly gets gas, huge wooden logs are placed in the middle of the road, so she is unable to pass through. And when she gets out to move them, the power is cut from her car. I was reading through the fan wiki and it states the men sabotaged her car while she was inside of the gas station. So with the car not starting up at all, I'm assuming the stalkers tampered with the battery. This means the car should not have been able to reach Norwood Bridge at all. So what do they do? Also, the worker told Holly that not many people go down Norwood Bridge. So before getting into Jason's truck, she didn't even think about questioning what he was doing there? Where's the awareness? She also notices he's being watched and just ignores it. In a real life scenario, you would definitely call somebody. And finally, my favorite part, the coffee machine! I can't even imagine wanting to stay awake and go into the motel's coffee machine just for it to sedate you and nearly make you collapse outside your room. And when you report it, the workers hit you with the, we have no coffee machine. What? I honestly feel like that's my favorite part of the whole game because the entire duration of me playing it, I felt so confused and it made me want more from the game. It's just so unrealistic, I feel like it really throws everything off just due to the fact that this is some next level stalking. A drugged coffee machine? Dedication. And hiding in the closet? This is what I mean about awareness. Where else is she going to go in this tiny room? Bro just looked at the closet and said, yeah, she's definitely not in here. In the end, with all its silliness, Norwood Hitchhike definitely leans more towards horror movie logic rather than a real life scenario. Unrealistic. High school student Noah Barker gets offered to house sit for the weekend by his father's client, Roy Carson, for some quick cash. Hence the title Carson House? No? Okay. But what starts as a peaceful weekend alone goes left for our protagonist when his crazy ex girlfriend breaks into the house with intent to cause harm to him. I'm happy to say this stalking house sitting story is definitely more realistic than our last one. No offense, Holly. It's still so common with nearly 58% of female victims and 49% of male victims being stalked before the age of 25. Upon playing the games in order, initially Carson House was my favorite. Unlike the last episode, this one tells a grounded story. Just a boy, a house, and a stalker. Nothing over the top. Everything happens so fast, and the way it does is so believable. From Noah's school friends, Andy and Turner casually mentioning seeing his ex, Kara, at the store just minutes before, a small detail that hints she's around. Then, she leaves flowers outside, messages him from a blocked number, and cuts the power. Calculated moves that feels like something a real stalker would do. Noah does the right thing by quickly taking cover in a room he thinks she'd least expect. And when she is distracted, he makes a run for it. Noah is one of the only characters that actually uses his head in this series, which is why he escapes the Carson house so easily. The security cameras are also a cool add on, and I'm happy the developer decided to make them a big part of the game. The Carson House incident is like many other stalking and break in incidents. A recent example is the William Brealey case, where he stalked a former partner and sent graphic and demanding threats. This escalated into a home invasion where he broke into the house of two men. This is a clear reminder that stalking is very serious and has to be dealt with immediately upon becoming aware. This feels like a real story that was emailed to the Fears to Fathom team, and Carson House nails the horror of real life stalking cases, making it the most believable episode so far. Realistic. Jack Nelson is hired as a summertime fire lookout in Ironbark State Park. He is assigned to Tower 11 and is in contact with the man in the next tower over, Connor. It begins as a peaceful and isolated job in the middle of the forest when suddenly, that isolation fades. The forest no longer feels empty. It feels watched. With so much land being at a national park, there is no way to keep track of everybody at once. That is the most sinister feeling of it. Anything could be happening at any time. Throughout the game, Jack can feel that something is way off about Ironbark and its workers. At first, Connor is very helpful toward Jack, but there is not much to be known about him, with him being very busy and disappearing from time to time. Is he one of them, or is he covering something up? One thing I did notice about him was he would tend to dismiss anything bad that happened to Jack, which makes it seem like denial. An example being when Jack first gets that uneasy feeling and discovers a skull outside his tower. Connor tells him to ignore the kids messing around. What campers would hike deep into the forest just to place some candles and a deer head outside the door? Man, a lot of characters do not use their heads. Speaking of unawareness, I do want to add that yet we have another unaware antagonist. Fast forward to when Jack discovers the cult and takes a photo of them with the flash on. Dummy. Honestly, our protagonist is missing some brain meat as well, and he has to hide before they find him. The cult member could have easily found him hiding under the bed, but Jack makes up for it by running away and hiding in the porta potty. Like I said previously, there have been multiple reports of cults conducting gatherings and performing rituals within forests. The Four Pipe movement was an alleged satanic cult that was reportedly active in the 1960s. They are said to have conducted secret gatherings in the Santa Cruz Mountains, engaging in rituals that included the sacrifices of animals, and an alleged member claimed involvement in human sacrifices, being apprehended near Yellowstone Park. So why parks and forests? Two words: seclusion and evasion. Being in an area with that much land gives these cults a better chance to have fewer witnesses, evade law enforcement quicker, and dispose of evidence accordingly. Upon first watching gameplay of Ironbark Lookout, I was not impressed. At first, I thought the game was overly dramatic and unrealistic. But after researching how common these activities are in secluded areas, I realized it's disturbingly plausible. After all, if something like this was happening in a forest right now, we'd never know. I'm very impressed. Realistic. Sydney Harper, a young woman who plans a weekend getaway to a rental in Woodbury, Vermont with her college friends. Little did she know what was about to unfold when she discovers her rent-a-cabin host is not who he claims to be. At first, while creating this video, I figured Ironbark Lookout was way less realistic than Woodbury Getaway. But upon playing both, I've come to the conclusion that I now feel the opposite, just because there are real-life cases similar to the gameplay for Ironbark Lookout. Here's the thing about Woodbury Getaway. The story itself is very realistic, with Mike and Sydney's friendship, traveling stories, and bonding at the cabin, but the premise itself and the antagonist is what throws the story off. Sydney and Mike check around the cabin for a bit and head upstairs to check out the bedrooms, when they are startled by the cabin's host, Rick. He tells them that he was out earlier searching for his cat, but remembered the TV in the bedroom was acting up. Off the bat, both Sydney and Mike are able to tell that their host is a bit of a creep. I'm not sure how Rent a Cabin works, but according to the Airbnb website, it states hosts and guests must not access or attempt to access private spaces unless they have permission or there is an emergency. Like, Rick, I get it's your property, but nobody knew you were there. Also, this happens more than once. After Sydney and Mike go fishing and make dinner, they play hide and seek. And who's upstairs in the bathroom? If you guessed Rick, you are correct. Mike mentions calling the police, for Rick to immediately respond, "Ain't no cops in Woodbury. A town with no police? Odd." Later on into the night, Sydney is trying to sleep when Mike comes to talk to her. A very strange interaction. Anyways, Nora lets them know via text that her tire blew, so Mike goes to pick her up, leaving Sydney at the cabin alone. She tries to go back to sleep before getting disturbed by a hitchhiker they did not give a ride to earlier that evening, so she messages Rick in a panic asking him to come back to the cabin. He ends up coming back, but the Rick she messaged lets her know he does not live anywhere close to Woodbury. She realizes the man that she is with is indeed not Rick, so she confronts him, and a whole wild goose chase ends up happening where Sydney fights for her life until Nora and Mike arrive. She hides in various areas of the house where she thinks Rick would expect her least, even as going as far to hide in the attic. Going on a weekend getaway always sounds like a fun idea, but have you ever thought about the risks of staying at somebody else's property? You are staying somewhere you have zero knowledge about, including who owns the place. You go based on images, a description, and a face. Unfortunately, sometimes things are more sinister within rental properties. On October 13th, 2024, a New York couple was charged with manslaughter after falsely claiming functional smoke detectors were installed in their Airbnb property, resulting in the deaths of a mother and her 1-year-old daughter. It throws the story off for me a lot. If the threat had been an outsider, it might have felt more plausible. After all, aren't these types of stories usually break ins? At the end of the game, Sydney says the real Rick asked her what the man looked like, and after that asked no further questions, which made them suspect he knew more than he was letting on. Maybe this fake host lived in the room in the basement? We'll never know. They did receive their full refund, but that doesn't make up for the trauma caused from my girl Harp. The story and characters are very realistic, but I was not sold just due to the fact Rick was always conveniently there. And I mean, were there even renting websites in 2004? I just thought of that. Unrealistic! The Fears to Fathom series has brought the gaming world some unsettling and interesting stories, each one exploring different dangers lurking in everyday situations. From hitchhiking horror to staying in a scary rental, the games remind us how quickly things can take a turn for the worse. While some stories feel quite realistic, like Carson House and Ironbark Lookout, others, like Norwood Hitchhike, might push the limits of realism too far. But that's what makes the story so plausible. It plays with the line between fiction and reality, keeping the audience on edge the entire time. Even if some of the stories and fears to fathom feel exaggerated, they still serve as a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we can be in dangerous situations, whether you're on the road, renting a place, or just home alone. But what do you guys think? Which Fears to Fathom story felt the most realistic to you? And have you ever had a similar real life experience to any of these stories? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and stick around for more. See you in the next one!